I must say, at this point in this year, I am shit scared about the future of summer camp. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CampHacker podcast. My name is Travis Allison from Go Camp Pro.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hudson from Camp Highlight.
My name is Joe Richards. I'm the executive director at Pierce Williams Summer Camp and Retreat Facility.
Hello, I'm Jolly Corley, and I am currently with Camp Robindel.
Hey, folks, I'm Ruby Compton, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Camp Code podcast.
So welcome back again. Ruby's had a strong presence in season 12 so far, 100% of the episodes. Jolly, we're so grateful that you are here to join us, and I appreciate your wisdom. So glad that you're here. Yes, I did say shit in the opening. I'm going to say shit again several times. I think everybody feels it. I think everybody, on top of the COVID stress and all the mental health stresses of staff and campers and all of that, there are a number of factors coming together that I believe are in opposition to this ideal that we have about what summer camp is, what it means, and the impact we can have. And so I want to talk about that. But I will say from the beginning, we're going to talk about the problems. And in our very next episode, we will be talking about the solutions. So 2 weeks from now, we will be talking about the solutions, the ideas, the creative thoughts that we have, because all 5 of us here do believe in this work and want it to continue. And as 5 people very active in the whole camp community, I think that there's a lot of great ideas from us that you'll get in part 2 in the second episode in 2 weeks. So why am I scared? I am definitely scared about COVID and the fallout. I am scared about climate stuff that I think people have gratefully been ignoring, and it's going to become sort of a big moral issue as well as a pressing health issue for our people. I am scared about societal changes and racial reckonings, and we all know that camp has a lot to reckon with in that. And I thought we could spend some time today just acknowledging that despite it that it has been a very heavy year, there are some things that we can acknowledge in order to set a brighter path going forward. Ruby, you get lots of different perspectives on camp through your work. I wonder what are some of the things that you've seen or that you've been thinking about?
Well, first, I just want to say, I wonder how many people have stopped listening because they thought, politics doesn't belong at camp. And all those things that you just said, Travis, are political, quote unquote. But I honestly, I think that's one of the things that concerns me the most is the kind of tunnel vision and blinders that I hear a lot of folks, me included, saying like, but that we don't worry about that at camp. Like, that's not a problem at camp. And when you sent me this topic, truthfully, I thought back to when I first started as a director, CampHacker episode 50, the title was Camp is Dead. And there were some really smart things said in that podcast about how we have to adapt and grow and innovate. And I'm worried because I feel like however many years later, we are having very similar conversations with even more dire consequences and even more challenging conversations that aren't happening. And really, truly, I think to me, one of the biggest things that worries me is a bit of the head in the sand and the like, camp is perfect. There's nothing that needs to change. Mm-hmm. And sorry, friends, that's not good enough. There's a lot that needs to change, and camp is going to be different going forward if it's going to continue to be relevant.
This big nod from you, Chris. What do you think?
I agree with your initial statement and your obscenity in the opening, is that I am also shit scared. And if I had to sum it up, the 2 things that I'm most scared on, to put like a fine point on it, is staffing of camps and
yes, totally,
just attention to equity and inclusion at camps. I've always said that I feel like the whole entire camping industry is about 30 years behind the rest of the world, the rest of the country, and other industries when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're still just focused on diversity. Like, how many Black kids can we have in pictures on our website, when that isn't really what they should be targeting? And, like Ruby said, like, these are things that people have been talking about, but now it's reached the crisis point. Similarly with staffing, just do a smooth Google Or if you're listening to this, maybe you even had the experience that your camp had to close because you just didn't have the staff to pull it off this summer. At Camp Highlight, we were a single person away, one person away from not being able to do the entire thing. And I know from speaking with people that a lot of people were in that boat, and it's becoming harder to attract staff to camps. And this has been an issue that I've been speaking about for like easily the past 8 years. Like, oh, let's think about where we're finding staff. Everyone's like, oh yeah, those are all great ideas. And no one really moved at all. And especially like, I did like an informal poll of people arriving into the country to staff camps from international spaces. And this kind of wraps up into the equity and inclusion thing. Some of the ways that people were treated were not great. And people went back to their countries and told other people about the treatment. And that is their orientation to working for camps in America. And a lot of camps rely on labor from other countries. And if that dries up, and if we can't attract young people, American people to do it, that's what scares me. Those two things are at the top of my list.
Yeah. What do you think, Charlie?
Well, one thing that really struck me that Ruby said was the head in the sand, and then tying that with COVID. Unfortunately, I'd hope this would like maybe open our eyes, but I actually think potentially it took a step back, because what we did is we say, well, because of what happened in COVID, kids need camp. We all need camp more than ever, which we do, right? But then it was just like this idealized version of what camp is. And I feel like we like went back, like, and I think there is a way to go look backwards, right? Reflect on it, take away all the smoke and mirrors that we've kind of, the bells and whistles. I do think that that is a great way to do it. I just hope that that's how we're doing it, not just going backwards in time to this era that we all need. It just drives me crazy when I hear that, because I want to hear like, okay, are you stripping down all the pieces to take an examination of what's working? And how do we move that forward? Just like Chris said, so that we're not 30 years behind. And in fact, when you're 30 years behind, in order to catch up, you've got to do it in leaps and bounds, not steps. Like you have to move it in leaps and bounds. So taking it apart, I totally think that's fine. I think it's good to look at all the skeletal pieces to make sure that the foundation is there. But I think part of the foundation is not what we want anymore, which is a scary thing to say. The foundation of what maybe camp was built on needs to be, we need a new foundation. Maybe that's scary.
Yeah. I'd love to talk more about sort of those foundational ideas that we need to get rid of as this discussion goes on. But Joe, I wonder for you that Camp is Dead discussion number 50 was you and I talking one day that we decided to record. What's your thinking these days? You've had an incredibly challenging couple of years.
Yeah, the past couple of summers, which haven't run at all, have been challenging, but also more relaxed than people who tried to run camp. Right? Like if all I'm worried about is finding money, that's different than camps that chose to run at a loss to offer the service. I think that there's a lot. I think where my mind is these days is that it's going to be really challenging in 2022 to just restart something that hasn't been going, and to find the staff to do it. And what can I do? What do I need to do over the next few months to make sure that we train staff and find those staff? I think that when Ruby spoke, right, this idea of putting heads in the sand, and I wrote down same as, right? Because we think about the past. And it's funny because it came up in a conversation today with my new bookkeeper. I spent 15 years doing something, digitizing all the text for the Canadian Camping Magazine from 1947 to 1992. And I dropped a link in the show notes. And when you read 1950s stuff, we deal with the same crap today. It's like it's not like we're 30 years behind. It's like we just don't appreciate that businesses are supposed to change, right? And that the challenges continue to happen. And part of that is that, and I find this fascinating, that the older I get, that all of my counselors stay the exact same age, right? Like they're all right? Like they're all 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds who come with very similar challenges to kids 20 years ago, but very different challenges as well. And I think that when I think as an industry, I think that if we do this correct, as Jolly said, this is a chance for a leap and a bound. You don't cross a chasm in 2 small steps, right? You have to jump. And I think that that's what, in my mind, I think that that's what this is for a lot of camps, is a wake-up call to say the way we've always done it isn't going to work. And there's no golden moment coming that will tell us all exactly how we're supposed to do it. I think this goes back to an idea I had many years ago, this Wii moment. What is the Wii moment? The idea of a Nintendo Wii and the way it changed gaming in the late 2000s and in the late aughts. What is the chance for us to move away from all of the bells and whistles, right? The higher graphics of video gaming and the more realistic, to something that changes gaming altogether to get more people to play? And how do we get more kids to camp? And it's not competing with our neighbor to have a better ropes course, right? Or it's not, it's not introducing a mountain board program. What is the Wii moment? I still, 12, 15 years later, don't know the answer. I try lots of things, and I think that if you own a camp, or if you have the ability to make your own decisions at your camp, that I think that you need to be trying new things all the time and let go of them when they don't serve you, right? And don't serve the bigger mission. But, I think that there's a variety. The little I interact on social media over the past few months, I think that there are a variety of camp people who still have the martyr mindset, which is that they have to work themselves almost to death to feel value in their position, as opposed to the, I'm going to do this for a career, so it's essentially a 9-to-5 job.
Exactly.
And that's the way I have to treat this if I'm going to have a life outside of camp, which is hugely valuable to everybody's mental health. And I think that when we teach young full-time people between 25 and 35 that they have to be the martyr, I don't think that serves our industry long term.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thinking about young staff. So we know from surveys that we do every 2 years about the podcast listeners, we know roughly the age and the experience of people that listen to this show. And lots of people are beginning their camp career and love podcasts and find us and have said how helpful the show has been as they get started. But a lot of our listeners have been camp directors for a number of years, and et cetera. And I think this moment, we've been talking about, waiting for a moment to happen when we can actually make some changes. I was in a board meeting with a camp, and they needed to, something drastic had to happen for the survival of this camp. And they're sitting on this pool of money. And I was like, what's this money over here for? They're like, well, in case it's for a rainy day. Someone in the board said that. And I was like, holy shit, it's pouring, like, spend the money. You can't fix this by this gradual, that camp mentality. Like, we're going to work our people so hard, we're going to burn them out and spit them out. We're going to, we have to make considered changes. We know that people that listen to this podcast are those who are thoughtful and willing to consider those things. But I wrote down 3 things from stuff that you all said that I just want to highlight quickly, and then you folks can let me know what your next thoughts are. One is, this is about the age of folks who are the majority of this, like the majority of discussion of the whole summer camp industry on a daily basis happens on Facebook. And those who are new to this industry, those who are starting in this industry, are not Facebook users. That's a symptom of our thing. And I own that. That's the summer camp professionals thing. And believe me, I'm working on that. But I always tell people to go where their staff are talking. And your staff are talking on TikTok, because I've seen them. Your staff are talking on Reddit, the our summer camp Reddit subreddit is fascinating because it is just camp staff from around the world talking to each other as if there are no camp directors in there. And I know that there are camp directors in there like me, but every time I'm like, yeah, I'm getting the unvarnished view of summer camp. And some of it's like those, like Chris saying, it was just internationals. Like, look at the shit I just went through. This is my shit episode of CampHacker apparently, but they're like, just look at the shit I went through this summer, and look how this camp treated me. So they're talking, you should be listening, and you should be in those places. I think aging facilities is another huge problem, that we have a lot of deferred maintenance in the world, and which leads me back to, I think our beautiful physical sites, those people that own, or those organizations that own their camps and own their properties or rent a great physical site, that physical site is a problem because people don't leave it. Like, it's just too much of a cinch. Like, camp is this great, beautiful place. And I've said it on the show, here's this great place, come and see us. And other people who don't own camp are like, I'm not going all that way for that. That is a crutch that we have, that a lot of us have, that I worry about. And I would say the other thing is that society in itself does not value youth development. We don't invest in teachers. We don't invest in camp. We couldn't possibly raise the rates of camp to pay those staff and let those staff work. Like, we do all those things. And that is a huge hurdle. I think as an industry, we need to band together and grab everybody else who does childcare and all of those things and get together and form a conglomerate that just turns on, and it starts educating the value of what we do better. I don't know what the result of that'll be. But that's one of those, it's a list of things that I've been thinking about is our potential problems. Just trying to get things out here of what the problems are. Jolly, was that a thought that you had? Come on in. What do you get?
Okay, I just wanted to, this idea of child development and like that we don't value it. I want to push back on our own industry. And I think I've said it before to you, is that we also, you may have to edit this out because
no way, bring it. This is the one.
You may get so much pushback from this, and I'm really sorry. But we say, oh, child development, it's so important, etc. And then we lobby our state, local governments about school, right? Summer. Because we don't want an all year round system that would probably be super beneficial to most of our kids because of that learning loss. Yep. And when Joe was talking about going back to 1952, I had done a keynote last year at one of our virtual conferences to the ACA about it really was just about our history and where we are in this place. And it was fascinating to go all the way back to the 20s. And they were talking about learning loss, right? Already back then. And so this is like a problem that goes on and on and on. And we are actually fighting it. Instead of what you were talking about, Travis, it was like, we need to think about how we can work ourselves into this. So for example, Indiana, which is a state that's implemented kind of I don't remember what they call it, some kind of calendar where they're, they have 2 weeks off, they go to school for 8 weeks, whatever. And then they only have maybe an 8-week summer. Okay. Well, if that's helping students and children and their development, camp has to figure out how to fit into that, not let's fight all the things that might be good for our kids so that we can still have our industry the way we wanted it for 20 years, or I mean, a lot longer than that. So again, I just think that if we really believe that, that is one of the places that we can grow as an industry, and we just have to be imaginative and thoughtful and actually put child development first, because that's what we're here for. Unless someone wants to argue that's not what we're here for.
Well, and to add to that, I've said many times as well, like, hey, thanks for saying all that, Jolly, that was spot on. And that I hear it, and when we talk about staff, like year-round staff, when that staff member comes to us and say, hey, I got this really cool opportunity, and we go, yep, you did. It's time for you to go do that really cool opportunity. And we just kind of let them go instead of being like, no, what would it take to keep you here? And I don't think we advocate enough for the jobs and the work that we do, because we don't take ourselves seriously enough, because we've given into this message of like, well, camp's just this other accessory versus an essential function.
I feel like, and I don't want to turn this a whole episode about staffing, because I think we could have an entire episode about staffing, but it's just to follow up directly on what you said, Ruby. It's very much like oh, this thing came up, there's an overlap of one day, and we're just like, well, I guess that's it, you're not coming back, and when you just said it, I thought about that because I had 2 conversations like that this summer. And I think I'm just processing this out loud, but like, I just wonder if like we operate from this like apologetic stance with staff. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember reading in the New York Times something about a parent had said that they would never would have sent their kids to this particular camp if they knew that the camp was, quote, exploiting the young people who work there, end quote. And I read that quote and I was furious, because I was like, we're not exploiting people. We're giving them the opportunity to X, Y, and Z. Yes, we're not paying them very much, but the experience is rich and worthwhile. And I think it's a failure of marketing communication that we can't get it out there. But again, that we'll say that for staffing podcast. But like, I'm just really plus oneing what you just said.
I think part of what this brings to mind is the fact that what do you tell a 16-year-old who wants to work in camp for the rest of their life? Right, I'm on family holidays this summer because I could take holidays because there was no summer camp, and my daughter, who's 16, says, "So how many more years do you have at Pierce Williams?" And I said, "Well, I was like, I think 15. Like if your mom retires here and I retire," and she goes, "Okay, so that's perfect timing for me." And she had done this thinking, and super super smart, super intelligent, and but when you have this conversation, you're like, well, what does camp look like in 16 years or 15 years, right? What does camp as an industry look like? And this is the reality that we need to face when we say we're scared for the future of summer camp. I'm not scared for the future of camping because I'm sure there's people who will get it and move through it. And those are the people who will survive and come out stronger. I'm not even scared for the people who don't get it and aren't willing to change, because that's going to leave more for us, right? More for the people who have adapted, more for the people who can adapt, right? And I think that those people who just want it to always be the exact same thing, or they treat their staff and pay their staff the low wage because that's what they made when they were young, right? Or right, it's fascinating. In Canada, we have some history with a province saying, no, you can't pay your staff nothing. And it decimated an industry in British Columbia, but it's not that the industry is gone. It's just that the private industry is gone because there was a separate standard set for nonprofit organizations, and I can see that as a possibility, which should scare private camps, but in the end, it's about giving kids an amazing experience and helping kids grow, and we're part of the system. So, the year-round schooling question, yeah, why fight it? My brother made a great point. He directed in New Zealand for a year and a half, and with year-round schooling, which means essentially you would have four chunks of time to run your camp, you don't need to recruit as many campers. You get the same campers 4 times a year. So you go from having to find 1,000 campers to having to find, 250 campers, right? And you keep them. And so there's values, and Australia runs that model still to this day. There and during the year, or during the schooling portion, all of those camps are outdoor education centers, because Australia also sends kids to camp overnight once at every grade level. Like every kid goes to camp. It's fascinating and phenomenal. So fear and being scared is it's like anxiety. You're only anxious when you haven't planned properly for what's going to happen. And you don't even need to know what's going to happen. You just need to have it in your mind that you have the skill set to move forward.
I I know we're skimming the surface of this. But behind the scenes, we're all texting with each other saying, I could go deeper, but we don't really have time today. But this, I think, gives us some topics that we can consider this year. We really want CampHacker to be the show where we consider the big issues in camp. So I would say, if you're upset about my cursing and or there are parts of this topic that make you mad or parts of this topic that you think we've missed, Travis at gocamp.pro. Let me know. We definitely know that there's some more stuff about this. I really just wanted to begin this, our 12th season, by saying we cannot continue to just gloss over things. We need to acknowledge stuff and make a plan, which is what we will be talking about in the second episode in this series 2 weeks from now. So thank you all for that and for your thoughtfulness and your good ideas. Before we move to our tool of the week, I want to take just a second to think about, to thank our sponsor for the show. I want to thank UltraCamp for their sponsorship of a few of our shows in the GoCamp Pro network. But I specifically want to thank them for making powerful tools that helps camps get themselves organized and keeps things simpler for them, all in one place, easy to find information. If you are looking for camp database changes or want to investigate some changes for the future, I invite you to check out UltraCamp. If you go to ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker, you can download their free guide, which is about marketing. The marketing toolbox. So I think that tools like UltraCamp are a good part of the future in that they will allow us to focus on the things that are incredibly important. But UltraCamp has powerful tools that put you in control of the information that makes your camp business run, help you automate your billing. They give you custom reports so you can understand more about your families and your clients. They help you manage your hiring process, including integrating background checks into that. And they allow you to better communicate with your customers and your donors. UltraCamp's goal is to provide these resources so that their clients can spend more time in camp doing what they do best and making the big changes that we've been talking about today. If all of this doesn't sound like your registration software, don't you think it should? Please visit their website at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker and set up a time to chat with you. They look forward to meeting you. So, therefore, we move on to our tool of the week. We spend time each show talking about a tool that makes us a better camp director, big ones, small ones, free ones, or expensive ones. They're all part of the tool of the week. Ruby, I want to start with you today. What is your tool of the week this week?
My tool of the week, I've been leading a fair number of backpacking trips where we are eating the backpacker meals that you just add water to. We eat them right out of the package, which I love. I like not doing dishes out in the backcountry if I can avoid it. But I bought a long-handled spoon, which may seem like such a silly thing. This is titanium, so it's really lightweight, but I don't have to get my hands all the way into the package. I really like the pad thai. It's one of my favorite meals, but you end up getting it just all over your hands and it's kind of gross. So just the long-handled spoon, I go such a long way. It makes me so happy. So check that out. And I know I just said the long-handled spoon went a long way, and I did not mean to do that.
Well done. Well done. Thanks, Ruby. Joe, what's your tool?
My tool this week is small drawers, things with small drawers. So I have some pictures in the show notes, but essentially what I've had for years, imagine a library card catalog if you're old enough. If not, then Google it. But the idea of tiny drawers, I've had some library card catalog drawers, just a set of two beside my desk for years since I got a standing desk. That has no drawers underneath it, and I use it for everything in that set. And then about a year during the pandemic, I found, and there's a picture in the show notes as well, I found a 24 drawer cabinet, and we organize everything in our office. So like your red pens, your black pens, your blue pens, your Post-it notes, your rubber bands, your glue, your staples. And it is fascinating. And I have them in my shop as well, just places to put things that are alike. The best place to find them are antique shops or auctions. And you don't need to go, you can go out and buy them. That's fine. more power to you. But antique shops and auctions, which was another tool I've given in the past.
Joe, would you say you have a specific drawer for squirrel saw blades?
I purchased test tubes to put squirrel saw blades in.
Okay. Good.
Can we, this is a new season.
Chris, do you have a tool of the week that you would like to talk about?
You know what, as a matter of fact, I do. So a little bit about me. I went to the eye doctor, and to make a long story short, my eyes are getting worse, like suddenly. And I was like, doc, like I need the LASIK again. Just shoot me full of lasers, slice off these eyes. I want new eyes. And she was like, well, before we do all that, have you tried not staring at your phone all day? And I was like, I mean, at first who doesn't want lasers in their eyes, right? So I was like, I guess I can try. So what's been really helpful for me is an app called Forest. And it's really cute. You download the app, you set it for how much time you want to not use your phone, like let's say 40 minutes. So then if I try and use my phone, if I try to switch to another app or do anything, it'll say, hey, are you sure you want to do that? Because what you're doing is you planted a little virtual tree. And if you switch to another app, that tree will die. So
it dies on you.
The responsibility is on me to make sure I don't use my phone. Otherwise, I'll kill the tree. And after a while, after I plant many trees, I have this little virtual forest on my phone. There's all these different plants that I've cultivated. You know, I've literally grown a garden from my not paying attention to my phone. And my eyesight's still getting worse, but I think that's just age. I do feel better about not being on my phone all the time. So check it out.
Excellent. Thank you. How about you, Jolly? Do you have any self-care tips for your tool of the week?
I do. I have my chapstick. If you're like me and you live in the north, and Travis, it's just like that autumn equinox hit, and all of a sudden it's like fall is going to be here, winter's going to be here, and then you're getting ready. We talked a lot about staffing or meeting with families, and if we're still on the Zoom and you're talking all the time and your lips get all chapped, the wind is blowing, it's freaking cold and dry. Chapsticks, and I'm already placing them around. I could have done eyeglasses, Chris, because I'm the same way. I'm like placing those, but I prefer my chapstick, and I really love Burt's Bees. And my favorite, which you can't see because the sun is suddenly it's summer, which I just told you it wasn't, is coconut pear Burt's Bees. It's really, really nice. But any chapstick will do as long as you have it around so that you're not, have chapstick, chap lips.
Right on. Thank you, Jolly. That's a great one. Mine is a personal battery-powered fan. It is like a USB battery you can plug your phone in, but it also has a fan, and it has, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see it has a clip on the top and a clip on the bottom so that you can put it into your waistband, and it'll pull in cold air from outside of your pants and then push that cold air up inside your shirt. So if you're in a hot day, I would have loved this for doing camp photos on those miserable days running around camps trying to get it. But you have this fan just blowing right up your back. It has the exit vent is just on the top, so if it's hooked onto your waistband, it's just blowing straight up your back.
But then doesn't your shirt balloon out like you're one of those like blow up dolls outside of used car salesman's place? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, aren't you just
and your
like,
shirt's doing that?
Yeah,
the wavy
you just
dance?
look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
That has not been my experience, Chris, but I bet if you got a good enough seal, that might be the case. It is surprisingly quiet too. So it's a battery for your phone as long as your fan's not going. And the fan will last 3 or 4 hours. So just charge it like you would any other device with USB. That is my recommendation. So if you want to find out where to find these things we've talked about on our tool of the week, please go to camphacker.tv/podcast and find our show notes. This is officially episode 151. I know that I have messed up the numbering vocally. Matt's always fixed it on the app, but I keep saying the wrong number, but I think we're all caught up. We're at officially episode 151. You can find our notes there for that. I want to thank all of you for your input, for your thoughtfulness. I want to take a second and thank Matt, the executive producer of podcasting here at Go Camp Pro, for keeping all of our shows running. He's essential to this. and also the other editors and producers of our shows for the great work that they have done. Before I finally thank all of you folks for joining us, I also want to just take a second and highlight another Go Camp Pro podcast. Some of you may not know this, but Joe and I have another podcast. With our friend Heather, we run the Fundraising at Camp podcast, a show that we just started last year based on some needs that we saw in the industry. And Joe and Heather have been educating me on the way of fundraising. I'm certain you've heard Joe talk about some of the great work that he's done in fundraising for Pierce Williams, and we're doing that. So please check out, just search for Fundraising, the @ symbol at Camp. We are grateful to Ruby, who's our editor on that show, and show note writer for that show. But that is a good one for you to check out if you're looking to expand your camp podcast listening experience. So Ruby, thank you so much for joining us again. How can people get in touch with you?
Sure thing. You can email me, ruby@rubyoutdoors.com, or follow me on Instagram at rubyoutdoors.
Thanks for being on, Ruby. Joe, how can people get in touch with you?
People can get in touch with me on Twitter. Yo Joe R on Twitter. YOYOJOER.
Excellent. For someone who says he doesn't do social media, you've done a lot of amazing social media experiments in the last little while. Thanks, Joe, for everything.
Not a problem.
Chris?
Hi, you can find me on Instagram at PlanetChris1, or you can find Camp Highlight on Instagram at Camp Highlight.
Thanks so much, Chris. Jolly, thank you so much for being on and sharing your wisdom. We're so grateful you're going to be joining us for the second half of this show. If people have questions for you, how can they get in touch?
jollycorley@gmail.com or Instagram, jollycorley.
Excellent. Excellent. Again, we'll have links to all of this in the show notes. And to the community of you who support CampHacker, for those who filled in the podcasting survey that we've been talking about in emails, we're grateful to you. It really does help us continue to develop this medium of podcasting for summer camp. Thanks for the evening, friends.